Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer, and this is one that I think will be very interesting. Both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, but I have had considerably more experience with the away brewery just for geographical reasons. But this is a beer that I think will be very interesting, and it's a style that's really grown on me over the last little while actually. So yeah, curious to see what these guys can produce when they put their heads together. So for the home brewery then, we are going to go to the Basqueland, or Euskadi as it's known locally, in the north of Spain, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Basqueland Brewing Project, or Basqueland Brewing as they seem to be known as these days. So this one is produced in collaboration with Amundsen Bryggeri, who come from Oslo in Norway, and it's called the 7-Minute Siesta, a salted caramel frappuccino Imperial Stout coming in at 11% ABV. So yeah, I think this one will be pretty damn good actually. I've had a number of big sweet stouts from Amundsen Bryggeri before, but this is my first beer from the dark end of the spectrum from Basqueland Brewing. If memory serves me correctly, this is only the third or fourth beer that I've had from Basqueland Brewing Project, but it must be around the 10th or 12th or something like that that I've had from Amundsen Bryggeri. The last beer I had from Basqueland was the Skate or Die, which was a West Coast IPA, and the last beer that I had from Amundsen Bryggeri was the Viking Brunchfest Club, which was beautiful. That's one of the best stouts I've reviewed on the channel before actually. So yeah, this one from what I understand is supposed to be a bit of a hybrid between an Imperial Coffee Stout and an Imperial Pastry Stout. But yeah, both of these breweries carry a very good reputation, and it's quite justified based on my experiences so far. This beer was released as part of the Tillfällig Sortiment on the 3rd of November 2020 through Systembolaget here in Sweden. So yeah, pick this one up while you can. There was an IPA released from Basqueland Brewing and another brewery the week before. So have a go at some of these Basqueland beers. It's been a while actually since I've been able to get a hold of these so easily, but they are definitely worth checking out, and we know that the Spanish beer scene throughout the whole country and all the different regions is thriving at the moment. So have a go at some Spanish beers if you can. You know, Norway we also know is very good for their craft beer these days too. So yeah, let's get on with it then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Basqueland Brewing Project and from Amundsen Bryggeri. You will no doubt see more added to both of those lists in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beers based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Spanish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another beer for all the Norwegian beers that I've reviewed for you. Both of those are being added to fairly regularly, although the Norwegian one is probably a little bit more regular than the Spanish one, I have to say. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, on to my brewery notes, and we'll start with Basqueland Brewing Project since these guys are the home brewery. So Basqueland Brewing, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2014, and they're based in Hernani in the Basque country, Euskadi in the north of Spain, only about 20 kilometers or so from the French border. So the brewery was founded by 3 Americans. This is Kevin Patricio, who is the CEO, Benjamin Rotzi, who is the sales and distribution director, and then there's Benjamin Matz, who is the head brewer. So Kevin apparently was the first to arrive in Basqueland, having met a girl while working as a chef in New York, and then moving back to the Basqueland with her, and he opened up his own cocktail bar and restaurant in the area. But while living there, he noticed that Euskadi, the Basqueland, had a gap in the market for locally produced beer, and the region apparently at that time was home to a number of cider breweries and wineries. So on this basis, he invited his friend Ben Matz to join his project, and it went from there. So Ben had grown up in San Diego, and at the age of 17 he bought his first home brewing kit, and from then on he was hooked for life. So after working at Stone Brewing and Peace Support Brewing in California, along with Ventland Brewing in Mexico, he moved to the Basqueland to join his friend. But the brewery started off by renting a modest facility in La Rioja, and they brewed batches of between 3,000 and 5,000 litres, which went really well for them. The beer got a very, very good reception, and at this point they added Benjamin Rotzi to the team, and he takes care of most of the business side of things when it comes to the company. But in July of 2015 they established their own brewery in the Acarregi industrial estate in Hernani, which is to the south of San Sebastian, and they produced around 160,000 litres in this brewery over the first year in 2016. But they've expanded the brewery over the years with new tanks and canning lines and bottling lines and all of this sort of thing, and they now also have a tap room on site as well. I do want to go and check that out someday. I do need to get down to mainland Spain and have a look at that sometime. It's somewhere that I've never been. But as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, Basqueland Brewing Project, or Basqueland Brewing, however we refer to them these days, have produced 165 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, a very well respected brewery these days, and one of a few breweries actually, a small number of breweries that come out of mainland Spain. So yeah, I wish that we could get a few more Spanish breweries, but these guys have made a very, very good reputation for themselves. And like I say, the beer scene down in Spain generally is doing very well, and I know that the Basqueland Euskadi has got some really, really great stuff. Apparently that's a little bit of a food and drink hub actually, so yeah, that's a place that I definitely want to go and check out at some point. And you know, Basqueland Brewing Project, I think these guys are definitely worth checking out, and maybe I can film an out and about video there. We'll need to see about that. It'd be cool to have these guys for a Meet the Brewery segment as well at some point, but we'll need to see that. That area has been on my travel list for a little while as well. There's lots of places on that travel list, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Basqueland Brewing Project for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. Sorry about the edit there, guys. Memory card just being a pain in the again. I do need to figure out what's going on with that. But anyway, on to the away side of things then, to the Norwegian brewery. So Amundsen Bryggeri, as I've told you before, are based in Oslo in Norway, the capital city, and the brewery is part of the Akerhus Group, which owns a number of bars and restaurants around Oslo. The main men in this company are Ole Johan Tollefsen, Bore Jensen and Tom Erik Andreasen. But the first brewery that they had was part of a gastropub in Stortingsgatan, which is known as the Amundsen Bryggeri, or Bryggeri if I remember rightly, and this was just a very small operation, but the main man in getting this established was Tom Alfred Oimo, who'd been a home brewer for a number of years, and he's still involved there from what I understand. But the brewery expanded, and by 2015 they were producing around 200,000 litres of beer per year, and they'd become quite established within Norway, having opened up a larger brewery in the Nydalen area of the city. Later on though, in 2016, the parent company purchased the property company Hauketo Eindom, and with this they acquired the Bjornurdeveien Fyrton property in the Hauketo area in the south of the city. But this was turned into a 3,500 square metre brewery, and the brewing began there in late 2016, with the new brewery capacity starting off at 1 million litres of beer per year. They brought in some new brewing equipment from Braucon in Germany, and then some canning and bottling lines also came in from Italy, and the total investment in this new site was apparently 16 million Norwegian kroner. But the managing director of this new production brewery is Jeffrey Jansen van Vuren, and then Matthew Thomas and John Hudson are the others involved in the day-to-day running of the operations down there. But the other thing that Amundsen are very well known for is the artwork on their cans, and this is designed by the American Peter John de Villiers. But in 2019 they produced around 9,500 hectolitres of beer. That's around 950,000 litres if you want to convert it, and as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced 105 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And these days I think it's fair to say that Amundsen Bryggeri are one of the more recognisable Norwegian craft beer brands. I would say that probably Lervig and Amundsen are probably the two best known Norwegian craft breweries outside of Norway these days, although there are some very, very good breweries coming out of there as well. Han Bryggeri are another fairly recognisable name, but you've got the likes of Ekotid, you've got, is it Lindeholms Bryggeri, are the one that are based out on the farm, you know, you've got Servicium as well, are doing some very, very interesting stuff. There's a lot of very, very good breweries up there in Norway, and I do hope that at some stage I can get hold of a few more Norwegian beers to review for you here on the channel. So yeah, we'll need to look into that and see how we can get a hold of a few more Norwegian beers and breweries here. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Amundsen Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then, since that's both of the breweries covered. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open up, and I have to say it is pretty cool actually. I have to compliment Basqueland Brewing Company for their artwork on this can. This is pretty damn impressive actually. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of a seafood theme on this one. I am not a fan of seafood at all. It makes me very sick if I eat it, so yeah, I just stay away from fish. But there you can see the crab in the background, the lobster, and there is a fish around there as well. But you can see some nice apples as well, and a little bit of grapes. Those are more my kind of thing, the apples and the grapes. Definitely not into the whole seafood side of things. But yeah, nicely presented can, this one. You can see there is Basqueland Brewing Company's symbol there. And if you move up there, you can see the kind of griffin thing that Amundsen Bryggeri use. As I said to you earlier, this one comes in at 11% ABV, and this one is being described as a salted caramel Frappuccino Imperial Stout. So yeah, Frappuccino, from what I understand, it's like an iced coffee. I don't drink coffee at all actually, although I do love coffee beans as an adjunct in Imperial Stouts like this. But yeah, Frappuccino isn't something that I am overly familiar with, but salted caramel is, and as I say, I do have an appreciation for the complexity of coffee beans. Like I said to you before, I've been really enjoying a lot of different coffee stouts over the years, and that started off mainly with the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu that I tried from Dugis Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden. So like I say, coffee beans I do very much enjoy. But this one's a 440ml can, as I said, 11% kind of pastry, Imperial pastry stout, Imperial coffee stout hybrid. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I think I paid about 70 Swedish kroners for this one, and this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt assortment on the 3rd of November 2020 through Systembolaget here in Sweden, if I'm remembering rightly. Can't remember if I said that earlier on in the video or not. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting, and I'm very, very curious to see what this has in store for us. As I said, this is my first beer from the dark end of the spectrum, from Basqueland, and Amundsen, as we know, are very, very capable when it comes to these big, sweet Imperial Stouts. I really recommend that you try the Viking Brunch Fest Club if you get the chance. That's one of the best stouts I've reviewed on the channel actually. They've also got a very nice beer that seems to release around Christmas called Zygo. It's an Imperial chocolate chip cookie stout, if I remember the term rightly. But yeah, I have to say, this looks very, very nice. So yeah, if we put the light through this beer, there's not very much light coming through that at all. This one is black as night, but as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this beer has poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. There was about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium beige coloured head on that, but that's faded away very, very quickly, just to be a very kind of thin foamy ring around the edge of the glass. And there's one or two little wisps of foam on the top of the head there. But overall, it does look kind of exactly as you would expect from an Imperial pastry stout or an Imperial coffee stout. So yeah, nothing really surprising at all about this beer in terms of its appearance when we consider what style of beer it is. So yeah, I think this one looks pretty damn nice, and you can see just from sugaring this beer up how oily it is. So yeah, without further ado, let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we get on then. Nothing surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. Oh, that does smell really nice, I have to say. So yeah, where to start with this one then? That's a lovely, lovely smelling beer. As I've said to you, coffee beans can add such a depth to a craft beer. You know, when it comes to coffee beans, it's all about the MASL, the MASL, the metres above sea level at which the coffee's grown. Different places in the world obviously can affect this as well, but apparently the higher the altitude at which you grow the coffee bean, the more likely you are to get fruity, citrusy, aromatic, and other kind of flavours coming out of it. And the coffee that comes across in here is lovely. So for me, it's a very smooth, almost more earthy coffee that comes out of this one. It does have a little bit of an aromaticity to it, and it does have a little bit of a kind of soft red fruity quality, and you can feel that just kind of forming the backbone of this beer. But it's more like it's almost a little bit more like a kind of complexity than it is. It's almost a little bit more like a kind of complexity of the beer than it is taking the forefront, if you like. The other elements of the beer are coming out quite nicely as well. So yeah, the coffee notes, we've just described it for you there. Lovely, smooth, earthy kind of roast. There is a little bit of aromaticity in there, and for me, pardon me, there is a little bit of just a kind of slightly reddish fruity thing, like a kind of candied strawberry, or a little bit of kind of figgy note to the beer actually. So this one has a really interesting coffee bean in it. I'd love to know what it was that they actually used in this one. You know, some really interesting coffees from the likes of Rwanda, some really interesting ones from South America, Central America, all of these kind of things. Yeah, it's beautiful. It smells absolutely beautiful, this one though. But yeah, the beer itself though does have a really, really nice base to it. You can smell a little bit. You can smell a little bit of that soft, that kind of soft, almost brown bready backbone to the beer. There's definitely a little bit of like I think there's a little touch of like special bee or something in this. Does this beer have lactose in it? I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Yeah, it has. It's got a little bit of lactose in it. It says cocoa powder, chocolate, coffee as well. So yeah, I can see that exactly. But yeah, the beer, it does have a little bit of that lovely kind of creamy note out of it. There maybe is a wee touch of an almost vanilla-like aroma coming out of this one. I would guess that it's not straight up vanilla. But yeah, you can smell it. This beer, it's almost like it has like a kind of brown bready base to it. It's almost like the kind of like a slightly well-fired crust of a rye bread loaf or something like that. You can kind of smell that forming the backbone of the beer, and I think it works really nicely. And the coffee beans are almost just kind of embedded in that and making the beer the backbone. But further forward on the nose, that's where you get the slightly lactosey and almost vanilla-like notes out of this beer, which is really interesting. It maybe does have one or two little nutty undertones to it as well. But yeah, like I say, almost like brown bready, kind of toasty, rye bready crust base to the beer. The kind of coffee beans that I've explained to you already embedded in that. Nice little bit of a kind of dry chocolate powder out of this one. It's got cocoa powder in it, and I would describe the chocolatey notes coming out of this beer as being maybe sort of 50% cocoa. Actually, I would say that it's roughly around that 50% kind of cocoa mark. Actually, it's got a lovely bit of sweetness to it, but you can smell those kind of slightly darker notes coming out of it as well. And I think the slightly vanilla, lactosey, oaty kind of thing that's coming out of this beer, that's probably just making the chocolate appear a little bit sweeter. But you can definitely pick up that kind of brown sugary note to this one as well. The brown sugar for me, the caramelly notes really sit there at the front of the nose, and they're very bright and very sweet actually, very straight up to be honest with you. Not even honey-like, not biscuit-like, straight up sweet, sweet caramel in this one. So yeah, the brown sugary notes that come out of this beer are very, very obvious actually. So I do like how the malty and adjunct side of this beer goes together. It's got a lovely base to it, this one. So yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of things and the fruity side of things quickly. I think the aroma of this one is just lovely. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, there's not too much to report actually. There's a little bit of a soft earthiness to this beer which plays in with the coffee. The coffee in this one, like I say, is more adding kind of subtlety to the beer rather than taking the forefront. I think the caramel and the kind of coffee and also the kind of bready backbone that the beer has, they're all very, very well balanced in this one, and I think the soft earthiness you get out of this beer really matches that quite well. There is a little tiny touch of a floral note to it, but you've also got some lighter kind of grassy esters coming out of the beer as well, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, the grassy esters coming out of this beer I think are quite nice actually. It gives the beer just a little bit of freshness almost on the kind of front of the nose as well. But yeah, the green side of the beer for me is quite simple in this one. Soft earthiness, a little bit of floral note, and then a lighter kind of grassy element to the beer as well. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of the beer then. Yeah, so for me, it's got a good, there's quite a little bit of a juicy figgy quality to it, and that forms the backbone of the beer. But yeah, at the front of the nose, you do get a little bit more of a kind of black, that more oily blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing coming out of this one. So that does play a role with this beer as well, in my opinion. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely lovely, so take a little bit of time and enjoy that before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this beer now and just see how we get on. So this one is the 7-minute Siesta, and 11%, how are they describing it? Salted caramel Frappuccino Imperial Stout from Basqueland Brewing project in Hernani to the south of San Sebastian in Basqueland or Euskadi in the north of Spain, in collaboration with Amundsen Bryggeri from Oslo in Norway. So yeah, I think this one is going to be a little bit of a beast. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. Slanja, Skål, Topa, I think as they would say in the local Basque language. Let's get stuck in. Cheers. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer. It just strikes me as being really, really well balanced. It's got a little bit of everything. It doesn't try to be too punchy in one regard. The coffee notes that you get with this are lovely. To be honest, I am becoming a bit of a sucker for these Imperial coffee stouts, but this one's got a lovely balance with the sweeter side of things as well. Just going to say straight away, thumbs up to both Basqueland and Amundsen for this. This is a lovely, lovely beer actually. Yeah, it really is great. I love these big coffee stouts. This is another solid one. I do need to try more beers from Basqueland and from the Basque region. Of course, I need to get down there and have a look. I've never ever been to mainland Spain, and obviously we need to be careful about saying that as well, because the whole Basque Spain thing is a very sensitive topic politically, so we won't say too much about it. But yeah, I've heard it's a beautiful place with great food and things, so it's somewhere that I would really, really like to visit. But I can see that about most places in Europe. But yeah, where to start with this beer then? So straight away with this one, that malty backbone that you have to this, you can feel that nice kind of, it's almost like it's got a really well-fired bread crust. You can really feel that just blanket in the middle of your tongue. So that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust quality just blankets the middle of your palate. You've got a nice, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of, how would you say, you've got a lovely kind of almost like rye bready quality to this beer as well, which is great. Yeah, sitting on top of that kind of roasty, toasty bread crust, you know, you've got a lovely kind of smooth, almost brown rye bready quality. It's not quite as sweet as you might expect from, say, a German rye bread, but for me there's definitely a bit of a brown bready kind of backbone there, just sitting on top of that roasty, toasty, black malty quality. I would say as you go towards the back third of your palate, you can feel more of those roasty, toasty black malts there, and then more in the middle third of your palate. That's when you have that more slightly sweet, kind of brown rye bready quality in there. But sitting on top of that, of course, and infused into that whole thing are these lovely coffee beans. And again, this one you've got, actually this is one of the beers that really does come across as quite similar to its aroma. So you've got that lovely kind of smooth, earthy coffee roast coming out of the beer. And I think this one, if you go further back into the coffee beans sort of overlaps the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate, about halfway into the back third of your palate. So you can feel as you go into the back third of the palate, that's when you get the more earthy elements of the coffee coming out and the slightly darker, more roasty notes. But then as you move into that middle third of your palate, you start to get a slightly more aromatic property out of the coffee, and you start to get a little bit of the fruitiness to it as well. It's a bit of a kind of dark, almost blackberry-like fruit that you get out of it. I think in the aroma I was saying it was a bit more of a red fruity note, but in the flavour it comes across as more almost blackberry-like actually. So there is definitely a little bit of a fruity kind of oily ester coming out of this one on the coffee side of things. That's a very interesting coffee bean that they've got in there. I love it. I think it's really fascinating how you can get some coffees that are just, some of them that are very aromatic and very citrusy. You get other ones like this that are a bit more kind of dark and more red and fruity in their flavours actually. It fascinates me about the coffee bean. It's a really interesting adjunct to use in big imperial stouts like this. But yeah, that coffee note, half into the back third of the palate and then about halfway into the middle third of your palate as well. So it just kind of sits there, and it gets gradually darker and more roasty the further back on the palate you go. And as I said, behind that, that's when you get some of the more kind of black malty, special B type malty flavours out of this one. But yeah, the nice breadiness is sitting there in the middle of the palate, and the coffee notes just kind of sit on top of that. But yeah, on top of that, on top of both the coffee and the bready notes, that's when you start to get the chocolatey note out of this beer. So for me, you've got a bit of a layer of it's kind of like a dry, it is more like a kind of dry powdery chocolate, but I would say it's a sort of 50% cocoa chocolate that you're getting out of this one. It does have a little bit of a kind of milky edge to it, and maybe that's due to the lactose and the oats and stuff that are in this one. But yeah, the chocolate for me does come across as slightly milky in some ways, but it also comes across as slightly dark in some ways as well. But that could be the coffee beans that are giving that impression. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you do get some nice oily caramelly notes in there, which is really, really very nice. I mean, the roasty kind of, it's got a really, this beer is not so roasty. It's actually very, very smooth. Like it's basically like a pastry stout, as I was saying, with that lovely big smooth and slightly sweet backbone, but then it's just got a bit of a kind of roasty coffee edge to it. That's a good way to describe this beer. But the sweeter aspects of it are very nice. It's almost like a bit more roasty and toasty on the back end of the palate with the coffee smoothness in there. Then you've got the sweeter aspects further forward. But on top of that, in the kind of front half of that middle third of your palate, that's where you get the brown sugars coming out of this beer, and it does have a straight up kind of oily caramel note to it. You do start to get a little bit of that lighter honey sort of thing, and you do even get some kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit type vibes out of this beer as well. This one's got a lot going on in it, I have to say, and I think, you know, you do get almost on that front third of your palate, if you do go a bit down a little bit deeper, you get a wee bit of an oaty. You do get a little touch of a kind of oaty and vanilla type flavour out of this one. So it's really interesting how that side of the beer goes together as well. Actually, I do appreciate that side of it. So the sweet aspect of this beer comes out a little bit more towards the middle, on the front of that middle third of your palate. It's a really fascinating beer, this one, I have to say. This is one of the ones that's really just kind of caught my eye. I love beers like this that test your palate a little bit. So thumbs up again to both breweries on this one. The complexity in this beer is in that whole malty, adjuncty side of it, but it's beautifully done. And I'm not, you know, knowing how Amundsen can produce their these big imperial sweet stouts, I'm not surprised. And you know, Basqueland Brewing, I've never had a bad beer from these guys either. But admittedly it's only 3 or 4 beers, but these guys carry a reputation for a reason, in my experience. So yeah. So yeah, that's awesome stuff. On the hoppy side of things then, there's not too much to report in this side of things, and you can feel back corners of the palate, you do have a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward along the side of the palate, that earthiness does spread forward. It becomes a little bit herbal actually, and then as you reach the front corners of the palate, there is a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic thing going on there. Then around the very front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing. So I really like how that side of the beer goes across as well. Actually, you almost get just a little bit of zestiness kind of coming out of the beer on the front curve of the tongue as well, which is really interesting. So yeah, the hoppy side of the beer is kind of what you would expect. You don't expect too much hoppy character from these big imperial pastry stouts, nor would you from a coffee stout either. But yeah, the front third of the palate, This is where you get all the kind of fruity aspects of the beer coming out. So yeah, if you go towards that front third of the palate, that's where you get that lovely oily bubble where those fruity juicy esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go to that border region between the middle third of your palate and the front third of your palate, there is a little bit of that roasty, toasty kind of cake edge sort of thing, like the cake you get off the very edge of the baking tray. It's got a little bit of that. But then as you move further forward into the beer, that's when you get a little bit of a kind of cherryish, a kind of plummy note at the very back of that front third, of your palates, I should say. Yeah, definitely a little bit of a kind of plummy, cherry sort of thing to this one. But then as you move further forward, it kind of mellows out a little bit. You start to get a really juicy kind of figgy, note out of this beer. And then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, that's when you get the oily blackcurranty blackberry flavours coming out of this beer. I would be very, very curious to know what hops they've used in this. Could it be a little bit of German Northern Brewer? A little bit of, could it be a little bit of a Summit, or, William Eight would be another option for this to give you those lovely berryish notes. But yeah, it's got a lovely oily kind of blackcurranty blackberry note on the very front of the palate there. So I really like how all of that pieces together in this beer. The fruity side of this one I think is really nice, and the oiliness that it has, both with the kind of cherry plummy notes, the fig, and the even more oily blackcurrants and blackberries. I think that suits the vibe of the rest of the beer. But you can feel some of that coffee bean smoothness just creeping in underneath the fruity side of the beer too. So the coffee bean, I think, it really spreads out the more and more that you drink of this beer. But yeah, this is awesome, this one. As I've said to you, I'm a big sucker for these Imperial stouts these days, the big sweet pastry stouts, and also, pardon me, the big Imperial coffee stouts as well. So this one really just does tick all the boxes for me. I think both breweries have pulled off a really interesting beer here. So yeah, thumbs up to both Basqueland Brewing Project and Amundsen for this one. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I think this is a full-bodied beer. I would describe it as being in the midpoint of full-bodied. It's not the thickest of Imperial stouts that I've come across, but I think the slight slickness that this beer has really suits the way the flavours come out. So yeah, I think this one goes together really quite nicely. The mouthfeel that has suits it. So I would describe this beer as at the midpoint of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth, really quite slick mouthfeel. It's got an element of oiliness to it as well, but I would describe it as more slick than anything else. In terms of bitterness, what would we say about this? This one's not got so much in the way of bitterness to it. I think this must be about 40 IBUs, because you've got the sweetness in this beer really balancing out the bitterness from the kind of coffee. It's definitely a bit more bitter in the back end of the palate. The earthy hops, the kind of more roasty toasty aspects of the coffee, and a bit of the kind of more roasty toasty malty aspects coming out there. So yeah, there is a bit of bitterness to this one. I'd suggest about 40 IBUs would be a good estimate for this one, but it's really well balanced with the kind of sweeter side of things as well. So yeah, 40 IBUs for this beer. The malty side of the beer, like I said, a bit more roasty and toasty at the back, and it's adjuncty as well, but you've got some really nice kind of sweet aspects to the beer as well in my mind, and you've also got some really lovely oily fruity character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the oily fruity notes in the beer really suits the way the malty character comes across as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together. This gets a massive thumbs up from me. So yeah, I do like how everything pieces together in this one. I can feel the alcohol going to my head a little bit with this as well, because it is 11%, and that's one of the great dangers with these big Imperial coffee and Imperial pastry stouts as well. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this was the 7-minute Siesta, an Imperial, as they're calling it, salted caramel Frappuccino Imperial Stout, basically a hybrid of an Imperial pastry and an Imperial coffee stout from Basqueland Brewing Project in Hernani to the south of San Sebastian. in the Basqueland Euskadi in the north of Spain, in collaboration with Amundsen Bryggeri from Oslo, Norway. Just an awesome beer, this, and if you do come across it, I would highly recommend that you have a go at it for yourself and see what you think. If you're a fan of coffee stouts, you're going to enjoy this. If you're a fan of you know, Imperial pastry stouts, you're going to enjoy this as well. But yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Basqueland Brewing Project and from Amundsen Bryggeri. We will no doubt return to both of these breweries in the near future. They've got both of them have some awesome beers, so pick a style you like from these breweries and you know, you will enjoy it. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was the 7-minute Siesta, an 11% salted caramel macchiato, frappuccino, sorry, Imperial Stout from Basqueland Brewing Project in Euskadi in the north of Spain, and Amundsen Bryggeri in Oslo in Norway. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slange, skål, topa, see you later. Cheers.